because I am a fool, I forgot to add the data type to... I know what I'm doing. Okay, there. That should work. What? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Delve. Now, it has been quite a while, so to ease back into the format, I thought it'd be fun to, highlight a typical approach to coding something. Now, I've done something similar in the past, but it was quite vague. So instead of repeating myself, I thought it'd be fun to share my thought process behind building a feature. Specifically, the basics for an inventory system. Because Halloween allows me to, well, hopefully provide better context. So again, the goal is not to provide a tutorial or something to copy/paste. Instead, I'd like to share the process of how problem solving is often as important as knowing how to code. So with that said, if you enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And with that said, let's get to the coding. Alright, so the first thing we're gonna need is some candy. Okay, so I've gone ahead and drawn some candy for us to use. It's all in one sprite because we will be using the image index as a way to identify whichever candy we want to reference. So 0 will be no candy, first one is a hard candy, second one is a candy corn, third is lollipop, fourth is chocolate bar, and 5 is gummy worms. And so that the code is as legible as possible, I will be using enums. It's just a way for me to convert that number of, each image index in the sprite into a word. And now comes the fun part of actually willing our candy into existence, because, gamemaker does not know what candy is until we pretty much tell it what candy is. So we're going to be using something that's rather new to gamemaker, and which I think makes things like inventory systems way easier to code these days. And they're called structs. Now, structs are pretty powerful. You can hold pretty much anything in it. For the sake of this whole project, or this example, whatever you want to call it, we will simply just be storing the name of the candy and a description for the candy. But for example, you could use it in an RPG to hold a whole bunch of stats for your classes, or like the stats for a weapon in an action game. You get the idea. This is basically going to be like our guide, so that we can pull information from this list in our actual inventory system. You'll see in a second. And we're going to store all that data in a global array. We're going to let's call it the Candypedia. And just so I don't have to keep typing global Candypedia every time I want to reference it, well, let's give it a macro of some sort. Okay, so we have all of our candy ready to go. Now we can actually get to the inventory part. And so we need a way to hold our candy. And what better way to hold our candy with, let's just call it bag. Look at that, it even looks like a bag if you squint your eyes. Imagine, kind of. Yeah. We've got a 10 by 10 grid. That's 100 spaces for our very big bag of candy. And as you can see, I have some placeholder text here, which is where all of that text we just added to our Candypedia is going to show up. It's festive. It's very orange. Now, just like I mentioned, macros are an easy way to shorthand things. So our grid width and grid height are shortened to, G width, G height. And that's how we will be referencing our grids width and height. Grid cell is 100, by the way, if that matters. Now, I should also mention before we get started is I'm going to be doing this in a very straightforward way. Now, the bag can be pretty much anything you want it to be. It could be a DS list, a DS grid. But for the sake of this project, since it's very straightforward, I'm just using an array. So all I really need to populate our bag is just to multiply width by height, and that gives us 100 entries into our bag. So we now have 100 spots in our bag to put candies. So we're actually going to turn this into its own array. So basically, we have our overall bag, right? And then we have our candy being added to it. And this is like a piece of paper that says what type of candy it's going to be and the amount of candy that shall be added. So in the draw code, I already have our grid set up, but we're gonna now tie it to our bag so that we can start pulling data from the global Candypedia. Long story short, if there's another piece of knowledge that I can pass on, is that being good at math is pretty useful to programming. Alright, so we added the information here, so depending on whatever type of candy is stored in our bag at that position, it will now show up on our grid. But as you can see, I have data type here, something I forgot to go over at the start. So again, much like the candy has its names, we also have data types. So again, type and amount. So let's test. Let's make this candy hard. So that should make every grid cell a hard candy. Or it should have a hard candy. Ooh, boy. Okay, I forgot to add the offset. Okay. Well, at least it works. We just need... we need to draw the offset. That's what happens when your sprite origin is different from the origin of your grid, but this should actually fix that. Let's just make sure. There we go. Okay. We've just told the game every single space is now filled with the hard candy. In fact, we can just already do this. We can randomize which candy will show up in each space, and we shall see a whole bunch of different candies. Yes! Some of it is not there because it chose not to choose a candy, but you also see the entire array of different candy types that we have at our disposal. Alright, so far so good. I did not mess up. Alright, so now for the actual inventory interactivity part. First, we're going to need like a temporary variable that'll help us store data as we start shifting stuff around. Once again, imagine that is a piece of paper. Okay, so we're basically going to tie this whole system to the mouse's position. So when we click, when we hover, whatever, it's going to snap everything to the grid. I'm also going to clamp it so that we can stay within the confines of the grid so that we don't get any errors. Then, just like how we drew it, we're going to get the number of that grid cell based on the position of the mouse. Once again, math, it's wizardry. I'm actually going to add one more variable just so this is as simple as possible. And for now, let's just see what happens when we draw the hover to the temporary text field. It should give us a number. Yep, there we go. So using some simple math and the position of the mouse, we can now literally find any grid space within our lovely candy bag. So this is good. This is very good because this means that every single space is accounted for, and that means I haven't screwed up any code yet. So let's proceed. So now that we know that the hover works, we can now use that number to then reference our Candypedia and pull information from those list of structs that we made all the way at the beginning of the video. Okay, so if I didn't screw up, we should be able to... Oh, I screwed up. So I actually referenced the wrong thing here. This is not what we need. We actually need one more reference. Can't speak. So reference will be the bag, actually, and the hover will go there. And then we put that reference into the global Candypedia, and then we pull the proper information. That's where I went wrong. This should not work. No, it did not work. What? Because I am a fool, I forgot to add the data type to... I know what I'm doing. Okay, there. That should work. Ah, what? False alarm, I was just referencing the wrong number. It's fine. That was on my end. My bad. So again, empty spaces are none. Candy corn. Boom. Look at that. Look at all that information that we added at the start now just being drawn to the side of the screen. So good. It's also now dawning on me that I forgot to set up a font for the number, the amount. All right, impromptu. We're gonna add the amount directly to the rest of the description. So what if we were to take these pieces and let's say we wanted to swap spaces, or we wanted to stack them like in Minecraft or something, right? So again, we have already got our hover, which details whatever our mouse is currently hovered over, and we already have our temp set up, which again is the same piece of paper that copies whatever is in the actual grid cell. So first thing we want to do is do a left click check, obviously, because that's how we want to select whatever is in a grid cell. And then what we're going to do is check whether the temp has something in its hand. Then if it doesn't and that space is not empty that we are hovered over, we are going to copy that information into our temp variable. So again, think of it as literally copying something as you would like a piece of paper. The exact same details, just being stored on a temporary piece of paper. Just to make things fun, let's randomize the amount of candy that is added. Alrighty, then in the draw event, if we have something in our temp variable stored in there, then we're going to draw it under the mouse. So we basically clone whatever is in that grid cell. So back in the code, now that we have copied that data successfully, we can then reset the cell data that we have copied, because we technically we're like grabbing it. This is the action of grabbing that candy from that position in our bag. So now we grab that same candy corn and boop, it's gone. It's gone. We have the candy corn in our possession. It is now attached to the mouse. Look at that. It's like stuck there like it's melted candy. Oh, all right. So that all happened here because we do not have any data attached. So that meant our hand was free, so to speak. But if our hand is not free, then comes the next part. So first, let's focus on the swap. So if the data do not match up, if the data types do not match up, what we're going to do is pretty much do the inverse of what we did when our hand was empty. We're going to take the data that is already in that cell. We're going to record it to a temporary variable that is not the temp variable. I realize now how confusing this is going to sound, but we're going to put that in a temp space. We're going to then take the data that we already have in our hand. We're going to put that in the new cell, and then we're going to take the data that we recorded before we put it in the cell, and we're going to put that into our new temp, and we're basically switching out pieces of paper. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Take the candy corn, put it in the lollipop. Okay. Well, that's embarrassing. I put this conditional in the wrong space. There we go. Put that in the proper space, and it should work. Pick up the candy corn, switch it out with the lollipop. Boom. And look at that. We don't even need to account for the empty space because it doesn't really matter, because we never pick up empty space. Ignore that there's no candy there, but it still has an amount. We could set up a conditional to make sure that doesn't happen, but it's fine. It's fine. It's quantum candy. We're working with quantum candy here. It both exists and does not exist in the same plane of existence somehow. Again, math is wizardry. Why not? So again, took the candy corn with the 34 candy corn here, and we can swap it back for the lollipop. 47 lollipops in her bag. This is the most magical bag of candy I've ever seen. I have hard candy. I would love to put it on other hard candy. We cannot. So let's make that a possibility. So at this point, I think it's pretty obvious what we're going to do next. We're going to check the temp type, compare it to the type that we are currently hovered over, and if they are the same, then we're, instead of replacing anything, we're just going to add it to the amount and then reset our cursor. Actually, reset our piece of paper so that it's completely blank again. So we shall try to stack 32 hard candies onto 41. So that should be 73. I can math. Boom. Boom. Look at that. 73 hard candies stacked on top of each other. And our cursor is back to the reset. So we can do that, and we can swap them. And then we can stack them. And we can pick them up and stack them. Pick them up, swap them, put it down, pick them up, stack them even more. Yeah, look at that. Look at the amount of candy. This is the most magical. I wish this bag existed for real. 417 hard candies. Oh, talk about a sugar rush. 314 chocolate bars. Oh, and I think that's a nice stopping point for today's video. Now, in conclusion, I wanted to stress that, knowing how to code is just like one part of programming, in that it's just one part of a larger puzzle. What's also important is the ability to problem solve and apply said code when and where, appropriate, and to get from concept to reality. And when you're learning, you don't need to be efficient. Like optimization and improvements come with time and experience. Like the code I've written today is not optimal, but it works. So in other words, don't be afraid to take it one step at a time and, at your own pace. And understand your limitations, strive to overcome them, and, keep learning. Never stop learning. Another great rule to live by. Be good at math and never stop learning. Anyway, whether you found this video helpful or not, I hope you were at least entertained. Now, before I wrap things up, I just wanted to mention that I've started a Patreon, so, if you enjoy my content and would like to support it beyond just watching my videos, you can find a link to it in the description below. Also, let me know how you got started in programming, or what's been keeping you from giving it a try yourself. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.